Hey there, welcome to episode 93 of the Quaggling Sand audio program. I'm your host, Dan Hugo. We are recording, not kidding, 5:02 in the morning on Wednesday, August 20th, 2025. We do publish this audio program on Wednesdays, so getting an early start for a change. Today's title and topic, dwellings. You know, the things you live in, the things I live in. If you've never heard or are unfamiliar with the Quaggling Sand audio program or with the term Quaggling Sand, well, this audio program is essentially solo audio essays. It's me telling stories, recalling tales, imparting wisdom, perhaps, in anecdote form. You may find them useful or entertaining. Who knows? I don't foresee having a guest, but you never say never, as they say. The term quaggling sand may or may not be one you've heard before. It is the technical term for what some people usually refer to more casually as pins and needles. It's that the return of circulation to, say, a hand or a foot that you may have been sleeping on or was otherwise restricted blood flow. So circulation returns, quaggling sand, that tingly feeling of memories returning from the darkest corners to be shared with others whom I will never meet. And here you are. Hopefully wherever you found this audio program, you're able to locate the episode description, which contains the show notes. Now, this has become a little bit more complicated. It used to be this was just on Spotify and whatever. Now, and I think it may have been on Amazon Music. I can't remember. But now you can find Quaggling Sand on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music for sure. Might be on iHeartRadio. I can't remember. But even more interesting, perhaps, this episode may be found, sometimes marked private, but may be found on YouTube as a podcast. Still trying to figure out why they end up being private. They get reset from public to private. Who knows why? So I got to try to figure that out. But in the meantime, you can also find this audio program on YouTube. And here's a little mini announcement. I've had website domains for all of my audio programs. So quagglingsand.com may be up by the time you are listening to this, depending on if you listen to it 10 minutes after I post this, maybe not. I configured a very, very cheap web server, Linode, if you're familiar. So Linode, I can host all of my website properties there and so on. So all of the serving, the web stuff, domain name, addressing and so on is all configured. Now I have to put the initial web content up there so that there will be something for you to see. So if you do visit quagglingsand.com and you see nothing, come back later. But yeah, Quaggling Sand will be up. And then there will be a site for each thing. So I'll just announce those during each audio program. There will be links on the Buy Me a Coffee profile page and so on. So yeah, everything's coming together. On that note, wherever you found this audio program, the episode description may be in a YouTube video description. It may be wherever Apple puts them, etc. There will be some show notes with a summary that I will read. It's 2 sentences, very brief. And then a couple of links. I will be kind of readjusting the links moving forward now that we have a website and all this other stuff. So yeah, let's get started so we can get finished. It's 5:06 in the morning now. The summary of today's episode. I have come to prefer, sorry, I had a pause there. Let me start over. I've come to prefer the apartment life, which I know will make anyone with any financial savvy cringe. But what can I say? Houses are not for me. So where have I lived? I added a so in there, so let me edit that. So where have I lived? Indeed, the links for today's episode, just like the previous episode. buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo, the profile page, totally freeform. I have links now to the Spotify for Creators profile page, the YouTube channel page, and now I will add the website links for the various programs. So you can check there, figure out what has gone up and what's coming up as far as the links. There's also a link to the Buy Me an Update audio program, which was formerly hosted only on buymeacoffee.com/danhugo/posts, which is the second link in this episode links section. But that program is no longer exclusive to Buy Me a Coffee. So it gets published there first, but is also available in the same places as everything else, including YouTube. And finally, the Coffee Solo program, ko-fi.com, the hyphen located next to the 0 on most keyboards. Ko-fi.com/danhugo/posts for Coffee Solo as another program intended to be just me talking about whatever, whenever. It has no particular release schedule. It has no particular topic or focus. Just whatever rambling notion comes to mind, or notions. So that's it. So yeah, don't forget quagglingsand.com. If it isn't up at the moment that you check it, come back later. Try again in a few minutes, as some error dialogues say of websites. So yeah, interesting times trying to get the to-do list shortened a little bit. Where have I lived? So early on, a window of time that I don't really remember. I have to say, I do not recall these times at all. Before around age 3, I think we moved into the house on Graphic Boulevard in New Milford at age 3. So names like Hasbrook Heights are memorable by name, but I have no recollection of the place that is or was. So yeah, I have no idea. I know we lived someplace or some places before we moved into the home that I do remember. So we lived in a house on Graphic Boulevard, as I said, in New Milford. This was an interesting time, and it was an interesting place. I have no idea how much the house costs or anything. I was like 3 or 4. I don't know exactly. It was an interesting time, though, with a basement, with a toy room of sorts. Yeah, that's decadent right now. It's just an old couch and toys and a very old TV. And our first exposure to cable was down there for some reason. So there you go, cable TV. And so basement with a workroom with a workbench and other such things. There was a boiler. Yeah, good times. And all kinds of stuff going on down there. An attic that was converted to a master bedroom and had an actual like half bathroom up there. That was kind of cool. And what I would say was a nice size home, although I was like a foot tall. So what do I know? Living in a neighborhood where a 5-year-old, eventually I would become a 5-year-old, could walk to school. And I don't remember the crossing guard's name. I know she had red hair, dark red hair. Could interact with the neighbors, which I did, play in the backyard or in the front yard or wherever, on grass or snow, and generally exist in a nice little mini community is something I suspect is difficult to find in these modern times. Definitely a memory to be sure. We moved to Arizona for the weather and familiar region. My parents had a home built, and the nature of this whole process meant our actual relocation did not quite align with the eventual move-in date. So we got there, and the house was not done yet. Try again in a few minutes. We lived in an apartment complex called Casa Cielo for a brief time, and then we moved into a house, a rental house, as the move-in date slipped a bit further into the future, but not too bad. We got there eventually. And eventually we did move into the place where we would all grow up. I think it was 1978 sometime, maybe. I remember etching February 1978 into some still drying concrete. I believe it was the side door of the garage. So somewhere in there, we would eventually move in. But to be honest, I have no memory of moving into any of these places. The Casa Cielo, barely. I remember a room full of boxes. There was, so like, you know, it was an interstitial temporary, so didn't really move in, so to speak. But I don't remember moving into the other house. We called it the Ruth House. It was on Ruth Avenue. And I really don't remember moving into the house where everybody still lives today. Well, my parents. I don't remember. So it's all a weird blur. The home we landed in, though, was pretty literally foundational. No basement, though. It had an actual solid concrete foundation with a weird neighborhood, but with the neighbors we would actually know, a small number. The riding of bicycles, walking to school, and this was back when it was still reasonably safe. I don't know if I would do that now. walking to school, getting to know students who lived nearby. So we had friends that we could actually go over to their house or ride bikes or, hang out, etc. Eventually driving to and from school when I went to a high school that was farther away, driving to work, the whole nine. It was a full life experience from age 5 to 18 or so. The longest single address I have ever lived at, I've ever had. I had that address for the longest time by quite a margin. What is that? 12, 13 years? 13 years. Sounds about right. I would go off to college 353 miles away in Claremont, California. As usual, at Harvey Mudd College, you're required to live on campus in a dorm for the first year, or this was true at the time. And I did live in a dorm on campus, 3 years in one dorm and the final year in a different dorm. Dorm life was a good and bad introduction to living out in the world. On the one hand, living with roommates in a dorm full of people who know each other is the makings of a sitcom. Definitely a sitcom. Many times over. On the other hand, it is a building full of people. West Dorm for 3 years was 88 people who are all simultaneously exploring living away from home. So there's a weird line between respecting the personal space and noise space of others and wanting to let yourself go and be the person you want to be. And in fairness, we had external outside speakers for 2 years. So we could play music as loud as we wanted and compete with others doing the same. There were a few unrealistic aspects of living here, I should say, that could be considered retrospectively as sort of a transitional slack period. For example, noise complaints were handled with some latitude, despite building shaking audio from some outside speakers. And while living on campus for a summer, the summer between my junior and senior year, in fact, I had a on-campus job. It was fun. We left a window-mounted air conditioner running at the lowest possible temperature, 24 hours a day for the entire summer. Now, the cool part, no pun intended, the cool part was despite running this thing for 24 hours a day, there was no impact on any electric bill since we did not receive an electric bill. We were living in summer housing on campus. We actually ended up staying in the same room, so we didn't have to move. So because summer housing was in West Dorm, which is where we lived, we got to stay in the room. We borrowed somebody's air conditioner, ran it for 24 hours a day. No electric bill. That was not really realistic. But then there were a lot of things not realistic. I should also say West Dorm was, and presumably still is, it was built in the 50s, and it was 100% cinder block and concrete, probably some rebar. So not built for summer in LA. Sort of some odd planning there, perhaps. We also only locked our doors during parties. So we left our doors unlocked with all of our computers and stereos and TVs and speaker, all that stuff. So completely unrealistic, but also like another sitcom scenario. And that was life in that dorm. I did live, I had roommates. We lived in a double. So we had a double room, a bathroom between them, and another double room. We pulled the whole thing. We had 4 people living there. So I did move into a single for my senior year in a different dorm. It was a room for one person. But it was in a suite, which was a collection of 4 singles, a double, so 2 people, 2 freshmen, 2 first-year students, and then what they called the L triple, which had 3 people living in it, triple. And I think they were all sophomores. So we had 4 seniors, 3 sophomores, 2 freshmen sharing 2 bathrooms. So it was a weird combination of living by yourself, but with other people. We had a common area, so we had a couch and whatever else, refrigerator. Basically, the 4 years I was there at Harvey Mudd in my college years, I was in fairly close quarters with a fairly eclectic group of nerds all the time, which when you really think about it was yet another sitcom-like aspect. Probably, Big Bang Theory-like, I guess, except funny. I would eventually move to the Silicon Valley after a protracted job search. I ended up finding a place to live with a classmate. I can't say that we were like close friends, but I had known my eventual roommate for the entire 4 years that I was in college. We all lived in West Storm together. So I got my first job in Silicon Valley in 1993 in the summer, moving into a double master on the third or top floor was a good idea. That was probably the best decision of these decisions, sort of. Turns out when we looked at the place, we did not know. And by the way, we parked at the end of a street. And I could tell you what the street was if I was really thinking about it. Since I lived in that neighborhood for my entire time living in Sunnyvale, you would think I would know. But whatever that street was, we parked. We had a U-Haul pickup truck with a few things that I had driven up with. And we basically parked at the end of the street. And we walked north on Moffett Park. I'm sorry, Moffett. Was it Moffett? No, I'm sorry, not Moffett. Matilda, which would, if you went all the way north, you'd end up at Moffett Park. If you know the area, there you go. So we parked and we just checked out apartments. I think there were like 3 or 4 places that we looked at. We went with Oak Pointy, point with an E at the end. Oak Point. We checked it out during the day. We liked it, signed the paper. We're in. We did not know during the day, though, that being nearby Moffett Field, the sort of famous airfield with the dirigible or blimp hangars in basically Mountain View, California, they would have patrol planes, and I have misspelled planes. Not the rain in Spain falls mainly on the plane, but airplane. Patrol planes, I think they were OV-10s, OV-9s, if you're familiar, propeller-driven turboprop with these booms that come out the back for magnetic anomaly detection for submarines and so on. I think it was OV-10 patrol plane. Is that what it is? No, not the OV-10. OV-9. This is I'm calling an audible here. VP-9? No. Oh, what is this? Oh, VP-9. Okay. A VP-9. 4 engines and a boom coming out the back for the MAD. So yeah, those would come in for landings very late at night. Every 5 minutes, they would just be flying over with their turboprops on the glide slope right over us. So that was kind of unexpected. That was good times. It's definitely something we noticed. Not quite loud enough to wake us up, but it was just in that like late night. If you were on the phone, you could definitely, what is that? Just the usual. This place was across the street from a gym called Supreme Court. They had racquetball courts, and I signed up there, and I would walk across the street and everything. So that was great. That was a good thing. It was immediately next door to a Lucky's grocery store, which would eventually become Albertsons. I think it was while we were still living there. We only lived there for a year, 1-year lease. It was pretty soon after we moved in, I guess, and I could walk to work if I really needed to. It was a bit of a walk, but I could do it. I did it a couple times. But more importantly, I could also walk around and encounter a lot of names that I've been reading about for years. I walked to the post office one day, saw this is pre Google Maps and whatnot, so I had to figure out where the post office was. I walked to the post office, and from the post office, I looked diagonally across the street and saw, I think it was Sun Microsystems or something. I'm like, oh, wow, I am in Silicon Valley. That's right. Just crazy how much stuff was just in walking distance or eventually a short drive. Obviously, Apple was there. I would work there eventually, but so many companies that would make Silicon Valley what it was, and we were right there. Kind of cool. It was like a flag waving that I'm in, you are here kind of thing. Kind of fun. I would never move back, though. My roommate was a college colleague, as I mentioned, someone I had known for the 4 years, and we worked together. So we would commute together frequently. We both worked at Supermac, which meant we were together a lot. This was odd and ultimately not a great idea, just for no other reason than you shouldn't be with somebody that often. It's not like we were married we were just colleagues at work and roommates. It was a bit much, but it wasn't horrible, but it was just a bit much. The double master layout was a big thing. That came in handy. And I think we lived there for a year. I don't remember living there for 2 lease periods. So I think it was 1 year. Well, because at the end of that time, another college colleague from 1 year back was moving up from the LA area. So we figured, oh, we can get a larger place, and the three of us could live together, I suppose. Three individual, if I could spell condo correctly, three individual bedrooms and whatnot. So we found a condominium very near Apple, and I had just started working at Apple. So I was like, oh, I can just walk to Apple. Although it turns out that it was easier to drive because of the street layout, and there was no way to walk through. So it was a long walk to get to a place where I could then cross the street. Anyway, we lived by the old Hewlett Packard on Homestead. We lived long walking distance to Homestead High School, where the Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak went to high school. So it was yet another interesting little spot on the map of Silicon Valley. So we got this condo to rent near Apple. I had started working there before we moved, so I was still there. And then my two roommates would eventually also work there. The one that was moving up got a job in the group I was working in somehow. And then the other roommate, he got a job there for a short period of time, and then he moved to the East Coast. So we were all kind of working at Apple for an overlapping window of time. The condo we were living in was owned by an individual person and placed in a little HOA that would turn out to be annoying. That was my first HOA experience. Now remember, only a short time ago in college, we were blasting music outside, and we had a fire pit, lighting things on fire. So not daily chaos, but certainly no HOA, keeping an eye on things. Renting a place from a person is different from renting from a company, which we had done with Oak Point. And it's not a great thing, but HOAs, no, I would have to give a thumbs down on that. My roommate from before would eventually move to the East Coast, as I said. So it was the three of us, then it was two of us in this condo. And there was enough room so that we were not on top of each other by any means, but we were also working together again, which was sort of weird. The quarters were closer. The other people in this little tiny HOA, and it was literally like a little cul-de-sac / parking lot area for all these little condos. They were like fourplex condos or something. They would complain about things like where I parked my car. I parked in the correct space every time, so who knows what they were having a problem with. And issues with our mailbox for some reason. I don't know what, just bizarre, just for no reason. Just say no to HOAs. The owner was a nice person, but this would really set the stage for my dislike of individual owners as landlords, just because of the way everything played out. She herself was fine. Our interface was the matriarch of the family. She was a nice lady, but yeah, dealing with individual property owners, aside from the fact that they're rent seeking, just is not fun. It's not something I enjoy. When we moved out of that place eventually, the roommate that had moved up from LA moved away. I cannot remember where he moved to. He moved and had all of my mail forwarded to wherever he moved to, which was fun. So didn't end on a great note. I would eventually move after our lease was actually up, like a month or two later. But I found a place to live, at the Pear Tree Apartments, which were next door to the Oak Pointy Apartments. I don't even remember if we checked out those apartments when we parked at the end of the street there. But that was actually a pretty cool spot. I would move back towards that rougher part of Sunnyvale, though. It turns out, we didn't know this at the time, the neighborhood where we were living is the worst part. Worst, one of those. It's definitely the not the better part of Sunnyvale. So, I mean, it's not like there was major, massive crimes going on, but if you are looking at crime stats, it's the north side of Sunnyvale, which was just sort of trouble, but older neighborhoods. When we settled on the Oak Point place years prior, we passed up the Pear Tree for some odd reason. I don't know if we actually even looked at it, but I seem to recall, and I don't remember exactly, but I seem to recall they had single or smaller apartments rather than the double master, and it was only a two-story place. And the other place was 3 stories, and we had access to the double master on the top floor, so that was probably a win. I had one neighbor. Actually, I had multiple common wall downstairs, behind. Was there one more? I can't remember. I think that was it. And then I had one neighbor across the landing of the stairs that would come up. So go up the stairs, turn right to get into my place, turn left to get into their place. I know they were from India, or somewhere in that area. And I say that way because I rarely ran into the same person. I think there were multiple people living there, and it may have even been multiple people living there for short periods of time. I never really had a sense. I didn't really talk to them. But the one time I did speak to anyone, that person was from India, working in Silicon Valley. That would be a common thing. This was an odd thing too, though. The trend was now pretty much set for me, where I was quite sociable in our dorm in college. I knew, it's not hard to know all of your classmates when there's only 150 of them. And then 4 years later, there's only 118 of them. For years now, starting basically at that point, I had become completely introverted to this day when it came to knowing my neighbors. I couldn't tell you who lives. I know Noisy Raymond lives upstairs from me, but I couldn't tell you who lives anywhere else in my entire building, anywhere. The laundry room, coin operated, pretty typical, was as far away from my apartment as had been any laundry room where I have ever lived, including now, up until now. It was nice. I think the door locked, which was a nice thing. All of my clothes were taken one time when I was living at Oak Point. So I went down there to get my laundry. Luckily, it was at the bottom. It was on the first floor, but it was like 100 feet to the next building where the laundry room was, so not too far away. Went down there one evening to get my laundry. It was all gone. I was like, oh, that's not good. Went there the next morning. Clearly somebody had taken the wrong load of laundry, so all my stuff was returned. So, okay, that's fine. But the laundry room at the pear tree, very long walk through a very nice community with trees and nice walkways and so on. I think the door locked, so I didn't have the theft problem. Although I guess somebody with the key or whatever they had, I think it was a key to get in, they could still have taken the wrong load. So it wasn't really a theft problem so much as just paying attention. The property itself had actual trees, though, hence the name Pear Tree. And so it was actually a nice place going to get my mail, going to get a package if there was one delivered to the leasing office. It was like walking through a little forest. Seriously, it was a nice place. I would live there for a couple of years, and they were generally good years. I never had any problems or complaints. Never received any complaints. Generally good. In fact, I would venture a guess that it was probably either the number one or number two place I have lived in my post-college years, in my career years. Yeah. Eventually, though, I would move into a house in Silicon Valley, an actual roommate from college, not just a classmate or a friend from college. My college roommate, with whom I shared our dorm room over that summer with the infinite air conditioner. Roommate from college was tired of working in Los Angeles, so I hooked him up with a, guess what? Wait for it. With a job where I was working. This is a pattern that would break here. I think this is the last time this actually happened. Before he moved up, I set about looking for a bigger place for the two of us. The condo was too cramped, so I wasn't going to go with like the minimal space. Apartments were more cramped. And now that he was living, I didn't help him move into the place, but I had been to his place in downtown LA, so they lived in high-rise apartments. So I was like, we should try to find like a ground floor place. He was really into his car. He would, rubbing it with a diaper, that kind of stuff. Loved his car. So having a garage was nice and all that. So I identified a home, and now that we were making okay money, this seemed like a reasonable splurge of sorts. Although, sorry again, finance people, I know. The place we ended up with was old, but fairly large, across the street from an elementary school. That would be important when I hated going to work because my window faced the elementary school. So I'd hear the kids playing on recess, and I was like, when times were simpler. It was a very long walk to Fry's Electronics, but it was kind of like in the heart of stuff going on the east side of Sunnyvale, right near the Lawrence Expressway border between Sunnyvale and Santa Clara. Had the 2-car garage, like I said, a reasonable backyard with grass, which was kind of nice. I didn't really hang out in the backyard too much, but we had a nice yard. Generally nice for Silicon Valley, where everybody was capitalizing on the rental market, which meant our landlord was very clearly skimping on upkeep. The carpet and the roof were among most aspects of the place that could have used a major overhaul. We had roofers come by. It was a shake roof. People would come by knocking, hey, would you like us to give you an estimate to redo your roof? Your roof is in dire need of any kind of maintenance. And we're like, we don't own this place. So people would literally offer to, can we just fix it? I mean, it's horrible. So definitely a rent-seeking property. There was no money put into maintaining it or keeping it polished up. But we did live in a DSL, that's digital subscriber line, the early days of fast internet to more people. So we had DSL internet connectivity. We were in a pilot program, so we had the service very early. And even more convenient, we lived in a Block 50 area because there was a fire station like 2 blocks away. I think that was one of the hospitals, emergency services. They all had Block 50, which meant even though Enron at the time was inducing rolling blackouts, we were in Block 50, so we never had a rolling blackout applied to us. So that was convenient. When it came time to move out, the landlord blamed us, me mostly, because I was the last of the 2 of us to move out, for all manner of things that were exactly as they were when we moved in the years earlier, but they were just old. How come this faucet doesn't move well? Well, because it's the same faucet from the 50s. You haven't done anything. So that was yet another annoyance, yet another reminder. Don't rent from people. So joy. When I did move out, there would be another house. I had grown tired of Silicon Valley. I saved up a bunch of money working as an educational toy company, Leapfrog, on a consulting basis. I had a bunch of money in the bank, and it was time to head back to Phoenix. Had enough with Silicon Valley. We found a standalone house when my mom helped me look for a spot. Yeah. So we found a standalone house, a few years old, not very old at all, in a part of the city that was desert when I had actually lived in Arizona last time. And the rent was less than it was for the house, the old haunted house that I had been living in Sunnyvale with the ghoulish owners. So yeah, great idea. The house had a granite rock landscaped backyard that was about 4 feet deep, so not worth spending much time out there. It was basically a tract home neighborhood in the desert. It did have central air conditioning, which was nice. Not so common in the Bay Area, not at the prices we were paying anyway. There was nothing to write home about, but it was reasonably close to the gym that I was going to, a new mall called Desert Ridge. And when I was working at Intel as a contractor in Chandler, Arizona, I could jump on the 51, State Route 51, and get to work and then back home in no time. So very, very near the 51, which was like an expressway almost. It was very convenient for what it was. The downside, despite the fact that my landlords, a nice couple from Poland, had been over to the house to visit, one time to fix the dishwasher, had me to their home for dinner. Nice people in general, or so I thought. They were seemingly nice. They were also prone to getting drunk and drunker, and they did so on the day that we were packing up the last of my stuff to move out. So they came by to get the keys, and they got very angry as I was moving out because I had not removed my shoes while I was living there when I was walking around inside their home. Look at this, there's a wear mark. I don't know what to tell you. You drove over here, that's scary enough. Yes, definitely a good time to move back to Silicon Valley. And a great reminder that individual landlords, which are rent seekers, can be a real pain. Had I learned my lesson? No, not yet, but I would. There was one last house. I got a job in San Francisco and decided when moving back, bidding my Polish landlords goodbye. And then it's not the fact that they were Polish, but their English got worse when they were drunk, which was even more fun. Moved back to the Bay Area for my second tour, and I have done an entire episode about that, my 2 tours in Silicon Valley. When I would stick to the when I moved there, I would stick to the Sunnyvale area again. So I moved back, could have moved to anywhere in the entire Bay Area, stuck with Sunnyvale. So I flew up to meet with the employer in the city, and then headed down to sit in a coffee shop on Murphy Avenue in downtown Sunnyvale to look through Craigslist and see what was around. I found a few spots, but one was literally walking distance from the coffee shop I was in, and that would be true for 7 years. Was it 7 years? It was 2005 to 2013. So that's 8 years. Okay, 8 years. So I think I walked over there and checked it out, and it was near the train station, so I could take the train to San Francisco, and it was near downtown, and it was a nice little quaint neighborhood and so on. Seemed like a win. Put in my application, all good, moved in. It was it was literally, I always used to say I live on the wrong side of the train tracks. It was literally on the other side of the train tracks, which was interesting because the patrol planes flying in at Moffett were annoying, a few years earlier with the Oak Pointy. But a diesel commuter train, the Caltrain, rolling through north and southbound, so that's 2 trains every hour or so, with offset north and south by however many minutes. It was not as bad for some reason, even though they had the required horn blows when they were coming in and departing the station, like loud. But it wasn't really as bad as the airplane. I can't explain it. But it was super convenient to commute by train to San Francisco, which was the beginnings of my ditching the car completely. My car would sit most of the time I was on the train. And then because of my work and commuting schedule and whatnot, when I was home, when I on the weekends, I slept a lot, so I didn't really drive anywhere. So my car sat a lot, and it was indeed the beginning of my car-free, carefree lifestyle. Not quite yet. I still had the car, but the seeds were planted. The neighborhood was okay. Sunnyvale was always a nice city, right in the middle of everything, and the house was right in the middle of where I needed to be. And walking to downtown was an integral part of my second tour experience, to be sure. So hanging out in downtown Sunnyvale was a thing. They had their summer music series, the whole thing. It was very sociable. It was good times. Living in a duplex as I was, where the property owners were in the other half, unlike my other living arrangements previously, was probably the worst possible scenario unless you really enjoy their company. So this was the worst possible scenario. They were a little odd. They were a bit off. However, all that would fly out the window when a fire in the detached garage next door would blow on a particularly windy night into their half. It was a front-back duplex, so it blew into their half in the back. So their place actually caught on fire because there were 2 garages, like a single car garage. So it was their home, garage, mine. So a huge amount of smoke flowed through this arrangement into my half of the place, but the fire never made it through the garages. So I never had burned things, but everything I owned smelled like a campfire. A lot of things were smoke damaged. And turns out, as I would learn later, I got an email from the owners, and they said, "Hey, they've opened the place. You can now go in there and retrieve some of your stuff. There's a gate around it because it was now a condemned building. There's a gate. Here's the lock code and whatnot. Oh, and be careful. There's a ton of asbestos because they pulled the ceilings down. Yeah, so that was good. Good times. So I got what I could and eventually moved to Vegas. Moved into the Laredo apartments. In fact, I was fed up with Silicon Valley again. I think I had enough. That we're done. And now with even less stuff to move, why not Vegas? Indeed. Mid-July, found a place in the Laredo apartments, ground floor, not too old. I think the place had been built like within 5 years before I moved here, so that was nice, I suppose. It seemed good. I would live there for 7 years, so I always thought it was the second longest place that I lived, but I think it's the third. But very close though, very close. I actually had a 1-car garage where I parked my car when I traveled for a couple of weeks at a time for Intel. That was nice, I suppose. My car was never broken into, even though I stopped parking in the garage when I stopped working at Intel. I had no major drama inside my apartment, no major drama in general. Neighbors were not noisy. The elevator next to my place made more noise than anything else, and while that was annoying, it wasn't noisy Raymond. One of the downsides, this large, sprawling complex that I lived in had a central mail bay for all mail. And while I did get to know my mail carrier, Belinda, because I was traveling for so long and so often, so she would always come, "Oh, hey, where were you? You have like 3 weeks worth of mail bundled together in a rubber band." "Oh, thanks." So very nice lady, but so my mail holds were fine, although mail theft was a problem every once in a while. I think at least twice that I remember the master key for all mailboxes in the mail bays was compromised, which was a problem. I had a 75% package theft rate for a while when packages were left at my door. And luckily Amazon was pretty good about dealing with that, but eventually we were allowed to have our packages delivered to the leasing office, which set up an actual mail room so that the packages were not stolen so often. So my theft rate went to 0, so totally convenient. Huge difference. As is often the case, from what I gather, the cool people working in the leasing office, and I mean across apartment complexes and whatnot, the cool people working in the leasing office, they were very cool. They would ask me, oh, where was your most recent trip and all that. They would actually take an interest in me as a person. So they did not last so long. Over my 7 years, I witnessed a very cool office staff turn into a reasonably cool office staff, totally different people, and then eventually to a room full of monsters after going through the pandemic lockdown in this place. So we all survived that. My lease renewal was rescinded without cause. It's a no cause. What was it called? A no cause. I can't remember. No cause release. I don't know. It was like, oh yeah, we're not going to offer you. Actually, they had already offered me a renewal, and then they rescinded it. So I went down there to, oh, you didn't get the no cause. You're not going to live here anymore notice. They're like, you didn't do anything wrong, but we're just not offering you the place to renew your lease. And I was like, oh, that sucks. So almost definitely, so they could charge new tenant rent rates. So after the pandemic, I think everybody said, oh, we got to stop renewing leases so we can charge the new rates and make more money. Just a guess. Today, I live where I live now. When I learned I would have to move, I found the spot where I live now. It all aligned nicely. I had actually looked at this place when I moved into the Laredo Palacio, in fact, a double complex stuck together. So I had checked out where I live now before, and I was like, oh, I don't know if this is, and they're like, well, we don't really have anything available today, blah, blah, blah. So I came over to this place, and they were like, we have one unit coming available in like, I think it was 6 weeks after you have to move out of your place. So I'm like, okay, well, that's a different story for another time. So when I learned how to move, I went to the spot where I live now. And after a tumultuous move out and move in that I would rather not relive, so let's just leave that there, I landed in what I think is probably my favorite dwelling, although the pear tree apartment was pretty nice, as I said. So it's kind of a toss-up. I think I like the studio aspect of where I live now, but the property for the pear tree was a nice place, although the rent is probably ridiculous now. It's ridiculous here too. But yeah, this is probably my favorite dwelling for a variety of reasons. Not so much carpet, which is nice to deal with, upgraded appliances. The place that I had actually put a deposit on and was set to move in had issues with the person deciding not to move out at the last minute. So the upgraded appliances helped to soften that hassle, and it was a hassle. Second floor of 4 floors. So second floor, I don't have the ground floor issues to deal with, if any. I don't know if there are any. 4-story seems to be more popular here in the north part of Vegas for the newer places, maybe. So 4-story apartment complexes, often. I ditched my car while I was living at the other place. So grocery store across the street, gym 1 mile away, and the public transit mini depot with 3 buses going in and out of that place whenever. It's a 5-minute walk. So all these things are good. If you have heard my podcast before, you know that I live within audio range of a street. So the road noise sometimes creeps in, but this is not a real problem. It's mostly okay. By comparison, anyway, that noise is not a big deal. The profound downside over the years has been my upstairs and downstairs neighbors. Usually, for some reason, I've not had next door neighbors, like common wall, side to side, that have been overly loud or problematic. But more recently, so downstairs here where I live now, there's been, playing thumping music at 4 a.m. And I always tell people, I built my own outdoor speakers when I lived in the dorm in college. I totally understand wanting to let your noisy music thing go. We are adults living in an apartment complex, so it's not quite the same anymore. So I usually don't make a big deal of it unless it's like 2 a.m. or playing music for hours and hours, or my new favorite, my upstairs neighbor's playing his own music and is not a good singer at all. But he also likes to throw heavy objects at the floor for some reason. I don't know. We have high ceilings, and the way this building is constructed, there's a nice tall column of air for resonance, so you get some amplification of some of the tones, and the floors do not insulate, or ceilings do not insulate noise nearly as well as the walls do. So again, noise doesn't travel horizontally from your next door neighbors, but you can hear an awful lot from upstairs if the person decides to practice wrestling moves or bouncing a concrete basketball or any of the other various ridiculous behaviors he performs daily, and they get really old. The ownership of this property recently changed to a larger, better known name that I won't call them out today, but so I need to figure out how to get them to take action here. The joys of living in any place at any time. So yeah, that brings us to the place where I live now. The take home, so to speak, that was an expression Professor Van Rijswijk, chemistry professor at Harvey Mudd, used to say at the end of his lectures. The take home message, the thing that I want you to leave this lecture with today. I don't even want to imagine buying a home. I know this is a common thing now. I'm in with the Gen Z crowd, apparently. Home ownership seems unlikely. I know the old adage. I heard it when I took my money in banking class in college. Buy a house as an investment and you can live in it for free. Down payments, mortgage payments, PMI, all the other stuff, having to deal with electricity and water and repairs. And it's a non-trivial chance that the neighbors and HOA or the location in general end up being a curse. And then there could always be a fire. Renting from individuals is a non-starter. I hate it. I would never do that again. Too much opportunity for chaotic outcomes, and individuals are very specifically rent seekers, which is unhealthy for the economy in general. It's kind of almost inhumane when you really think about it. This is how people were able to live in Silicon Valley, though, as it exploded with money, renting out their places that they owned from the 80s or earlier that they got for tens or $100,000 that were now sellable for millions or rentable for more, essentially. If they still had a mortgage to pay, they were paying the mortgage and putting tons of money in the bank. So good for them. Rent seeking. I think this is unhealthy, and I would prefer to avoid this arrangement forevermore. Apartments with corporate owners have their own challenges. Yes, where I live now, certainly not perfect. But this place seems to have minimized a lot of that for me anyway. And with a mail room for deliveries that locks with actual delivery lockers now, that was a feature they added like a year and a half ago. It's mostly okay. I haven't had package theft problems like I used to by any means. Not zero, unfortunately. That's an Amazon delivery issue, but nothing Amazon support can't solve. But anyway, so no need to park a car. I don't have a car and deal with that, but there is a parking structure with a gate and everything. So, okay, if I ever did have a car to park or deal with, nice, sort of. Not really worth it. And a super annoying neighbor now and then, including noisy Raymond upstairs. And it's honestly the better choice given the location, my own selected and preferred amenities, mostly inside my place. The kitchen's pretty good. The lack of carpeting to deal with, there's a little, but not too much. The lack of need to pay attention to some of the details like plumbing or washer dryer or whatever. I can focus on me. So it's the lesser of all evils to some extent. It is home sweet home. And that brings us up to date with my travails through the joys of living in a place at a time, wherever and whenever those might be. We're coming up, my clock says 52 minutes. When I truncate the silence, it'll probably be closer to 50 or 48 minutes, perhaps, 48 to 50 minutes. That's probably enough time talking about my various dwellings. And so I will leave it there. Thank you, as always, for listening. Don't forget quagglingsand.com. And if you aren't totally familiar with how to spell that, or if you want to click on a link, you can go to the links section wherever you found this audio program, or you can visit buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo directly. I will update the link, the homepage link on this audio program profile page, on the Spotify for Creators profile page, and on the YouTube page. So the link will appear more and more, and I'll update the links section for future episodes, all of the things. But yeah, so if you visit quagglingsand.com and you don't find any content, or if you find something that's broken, try again in a few minutes. And that is where I'll leave it for today. Thank you. Till next week. Bye.